she also writes for the Saints Wire, which is USA Today. And this week, she had an excellent piece concerning Jameis Winston. She did some diving into the actual back injury, talked some docs. Well, let's pick her brain about it. Maddy, I'm looking at my own camera, so it's going to look like I'm not, I'm looking away, but it looks to the audience like we're kind of looking at each other. What's up? Thank you so much for waking up with us on this Friday.
Thanks for having me. Please ignore the skull thing behind me. It's one of my mom's wigs.
Okay, hell yes, dude. I mean, very New Orleans bona fide.
So I explained that.
Established immediately. Also, spooky season right around the corner, so it plays, dude. And we're big costume fans here, Maddy. Also, I was a big fan of the piece that you did on Jameis's lumbar fractures. We kind of broke it down yesterday with L1 through L4, maybe how those pertain to the body, and when you look at Jameis's struggles, so we kind of talked about it yesterday. But how did you come to this information? Who did you talk to? How did you start to dive into this topic of Jameis's back?
Well, I'd actually missed the initial report. I was kind of late to the Superdome. I was kind of dragging from the Kansas State travel. I actually got a text from my dad about halfway through the first or second quarter saying something. I turned to the woman next to me, and she had kind of brought up a broken back earlier, and I hadn't really heard her. And she was like, yeah, I was a little surprised why you didn't react before. So after that, I was so caught off guard, and everything I'd already seemed so out of sync. But trying to now add that layer into analyzing what was happening on the field. And then you're watching Chris Olave continue to run deep post routes. And it looked like those Taysom Hill throws to Emmanuel Sanders, where it looked like a punt that he had to run backwards and catch in order to convert, a reception. It just seemed so off. And so then the reaction, Jameis Winston throws 3 turnovers. And we all know that perception of him immediately follows that. But I always go back to the God's plan situation in Carolina, where I would pay money to have kind of seen Sean Payton's reaction to when he said that on the sideline. But it didn't so much seem like that was the reason for those interceptions. I had always seen that more as him not seeing a linebacker breaking in coverage across the middle of the field. But isn't the best thing about Jameis Winston his ability to launch 70-yard bombs with almost no effort?
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of started looking up like PubMed journals on fractures and seeing that so much of it kind of had to do with the lower back. And then I actually tagged in our sports medicine director at Tulane, Albie Linden, just to ask him if I was kind of on the right track. But it caught me off guard how much of it had to do with your lower body. And I know Jameis Winston gets a lot of flack on his mechanics, but I feel like if nothing else, he's really worked on footwork drills this offseason. He kind of gets made fun of for those kind of spastic videos that you kind of see. But to me, a lot of that is him deliberately working on his footwork. Yes, Drew Brees was really good at it, but it would be interesting to see when Drew Brees was kind of learning how to implement footwork. I don't think all those things kind of happened in Tampa Bay. So with all of those things just seemed off to me. The first pass he threw, you could see kind of threw it like a fastball baseball when it was a short reception. So when you're not able to set your feet, you're not able to kind of use your full range of motion in your lower body, then it really makes a lot more sense to me, why he was unable to execute those deep balls. And then I think the question is, in terms of decision making, the coaching staff, I feel that there should have been some corrections made, but I do think that Jameis Winston at some point had to also kind of be aware of his limitations and perhaps not try it a 15th time.
So that is kind of the debate now, right? Because we definitely have correlating factors in the inaccuracies of stuff that he's normally good at, like you said, and the back injury. We know that it's definitely a pain tolerance thing, which is tough, and players sometimes have to be protected from themselves. Again, I said correlating, maybe causal, maybe not. But how much of a rope do you think he has here? Like, would you play him on Sunday? If he struggles, do you make a change? Do you let him get through one more game? And then if it looks the same, be like, look, man, your body is just telling you here that you need to shut it down. What's your read on the situation?
Now that there's been an additional ankle injury that came up on the first injury report this week, I start to kind of take a step back here because at some point, what are you doing if your quarterback has 4 vertebrae fractures? It's hard to say, unless they're really not that severe. But if you now add on an ankle injury, I feel like that just puts you so much more at risk in general.
Yeah.
I feel like if he feels that he's able to go, maybe, but I agree with you where players are their worst enemy in that aspect. And we've all tried to play through an injury and kind of ignore the limitations because you want to keep playing, you want to win. Yeah. I think Carolina is an easy opponent, and not really, but easy compared to kind of schedule stretches down the line.
Yeah.
Right. I think if he's healthy, then he should play because I think, I guess it's best case and worst case at the same time. Andy Dalton starts and kind of lights it up. Then you kind of have a situation on your hands of when do you kind of hand the game back to Jameis Winston.
Yep.
So, if it was me, I'd maybe really prep for both of them to get going. I don't know how severe the ankle injury is. That really does give me pause, but I would give him a quarter tops. And if it is so obvious that he cannot get it going, then at that point, I think you just pull him and let him rest so you don't have a season-long issue with him.
And, Maddy, that's why you have Andy Dalton in town, right? That's why you didn't keep, like, an Ian Book as your backup quarterback. Like, you have Andy Dalton in case something like this happens. And if you have a quarterback in Jameis that's at 75%, I mean, 100% Andy Dalton just makes sense in this scenario, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people saw the preseason Andy Dalton game and went a little, lunatic when it's such a vanilla game plan. If a quarterback is not doing well in the preseason, like Ian Book, then to me that's a red flag. If they're doing well, then that should be kind of a given. I think Andy Dalton is a luxury as a backup quarterback, though. Yeah. I feel like the Saints, when Drew Brees went down that first time and they had Teddy Bridgewater come in, they were really the first team to me to see the value in having an actual starting backup quarterback. You think back a few years and it's, the Luke McCown's holding a clipboard. That's really what the point of backup quarterbacks were. There was really no foresight put into them having to go in for an extended period of time. And then Trevor Siemian, I think he's an in-game relief king, but in terms of being able to start for several games, I just don't think it was there. But Andy Dalton has gone to the playoffs before. He's been the starting quarterback on a team, and he's now gone to several different teams and stepped in relief in terms of injury. I think that he has, the traits that Pete Carmichael's system kind of set up for Drew Brees. He can execute those kind of short gains and get the ball moving at least. So, yeah, I mean, it could be so much worse than Andy Dalton back there. And quite frankly, even if it had to come down to Taysom Hill for a game, people might want to freak out about Taysom Hill, but quite honestly, if he's totally healthy too, the Saints, if something happens to Andy Dalton, their emergency quarterback actually playing quarterback for them last year really kind of sets him up in a good place. So again, depending on how the Panthers pass rush kind of gets after him, you saw him take a few sacks and then you wonder, when did the ankle injury happen? Because if you keep adding on injuries, then you have, that SpongeBob meme of the guy who's in a head-to-toe cast that I don't know when everything gets fixed at that point.
We will see, and it's a big boy on Sunday. Like you said, relative to the rest of your schedule, I feel like you almost have to win this game. Maddy, thank you so much. We'll definitely do this again. Also, I would recommend going to read the piece on the Saints Wire. She also gets into Alontae Taylor. He was fantastic. So was Pete Werner. The Saints defense should be great on Sunday. Maddy Hudak. Maddy, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, yeah, and catch Maddy tomorrow night, Tulane Southern Miss, Yeoman Stadium. She'll be doing the Southern Report for the broadcasting. Roll Wave.